Welcome to Writer's Den. I'm Brenda Joyce Patterson. Writer's Den is a program that uncovers and showcases all things literary in Polk County and beyond. And today we have in our studio a lovely lady. Her name is Maria York. Welcome.
Hello, Brenda. This is a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, you know, I've done this for a little bit, but every time I do it, I feel like a little kid, and I go, people came, the writer came. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a joy.
It's great. So, you've written 3 books. Well, actually, we know each other a little bit, people, in case you're wondering. And so I know she's written more than the books that she's published. So she's written 3 books. The Chaton Bride, please correct my pronunciation if I'm wrong, Black Butterfly, and
Ashes of a Madman.
Thank you, because I was like, madman. I can't say madman first. Ashes of a Madman. Yeah. So you've been doing this for a little while, yes?
Yes. I started off when I was very young. I would write a lot in high school and wound up being entered into some writing contests and was published at a young age. Cool. Short stories and poetry, which I know poetry is your fascination.
It's my thing. It's my thing. I love poetry. Yeah. We talked earlier because, okay, I do cheat a little bit, people. I like the idea of being able to talk to the authors, first to make them a little bit more comfortable, to make me a little bit more comfortable, but also so that I can sort of ferret out the things that are really important in their lives, in their writing lives. And so in your writing life, we were talking earlier about fear and sometimes missed opportunities and what have you. I kind of want to jump in right there. I know we talked about some other things, but I want to jump in right there. So you said you were 16 and you got this fantastic opportunity. Can you tell me a little bit about it and maybe what happened after that?
Yes, I entered it anonymously and put in a couple of different pieces, some poetry, some short stories, and I actually was very surprised that I had won this competition within this publishing. It was a small publishing press. So they wrote to me afterward because I was so young. Right. And they said, well, we would really like for you to be able to be guided in this industry. We know It's a challenging industry. And I really wasn't sure. I was, I grew up in a very poor rural area in New York, and I really wasn't sure what I was going to do about my writing. My family really focused on do something practical.
Always.
Writing is not going to be lucrative enough to support you.
Right.
So really focus on something that will sustain you financially. And so I was pleased about what a beautiful letter I had received. I kept it.
Yay.
I still have it.
Yeah.
But I did just let that opportunity pass me by, thinking I needed to focus on something practical.
Well, and I understand that because we have somewhat similar backgrounds in that. And of course, your loved ones, they always tell you that because they want you to be able to take care of yourself once you get to be an adult, so they don't have to worry about you. But I know that we had said that this first portion of a bit of success that you've gotten with your writing, that you let that go a little bit. But didn't you get another sort of opportunity to do some writing, or am I remembering incorrectly?
I never stopped writing.
Ah, right, of course.
That never goes away. Throughout my entire life, I continued to write, even if it wasn't what I thought would ever support me. Right. I would write furiously and hide it under the bed.
Yes, I understand that. I'm gonna jump in just a little bit at something a little touchy, but then we're gonna go right back out. And I want to bring it up that actually Maria York is a pen name that you do all this fantastic writing under. And sometimes when people are beginning to write, they think, well, should I write under my own name? Should I have a pen name? Will it get in the way? And I figured since you actually do this and you've written more than one book under your pen name, why do you write under your pen name? And do you suggest that other writers do that?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Ooh, okay.
But I chose to do this because I work in the mental health field.
Right.
It's in the background.
Right.
But I really didn't want anyone to worry about that piece.
Right.
So I chose to write under a pen name, under a pseudonym. But it does create specific complications.
True.
I have a life. I have friends. I have colleagues. And yet Maria York is invented.
Right.
So it is more difficult to get Maria York out there and
Right.
market under a name that is not yours. It's always easier to maintain one identity. It's
Right.
harder to maintain two.
Right. To have aspects of that one identity, multiple aspects of that one identity, and that's a good thing. And it is true that when you write and you're having this writing life, which is a fantastic thing, you pull on the already established, your own established identity to help further your writing along. But if you can't really fully write under your own name, then it makes it, I can imagine it makes it a little bit difficult. It's a little bit difficult. But that's okay. You have a website and you've got readers and you're doing good enough. We got you on here, so this is a good
Well,
thing.
thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yes, having that writer platform is essential. That's something that you have to learn along the way. What are you supposed to do once you finish your work?
Right.
Sometimes we think, well, I've finished. Look at this beautiful piece of art, and yet it really is just the raw material for that. So you do have to go out, educate yourself. If you're not going to utilize an agent or go through the traditional publishing avenues, you have to sort it all out for yourself.
Right.
They're experts, and when you're doing it yourself, well, we're not experts. We just do our best.
Right.
And we're always learning. We learn from each other. We learn from each other's mistakes. So sometimes you'll see a writer who has self-published and they have this beautiful writing platform. They're active on Twitter and they have a lot of followers. They say clever things on a
Right.
regular basis. They'll be active on Facebook. They'll have a writing blog.
Right.
All of these steps. And then occasionally you'll see them make a misstep.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, what have I learned from this? And then
Yes.
on my side, I appreciate that I too have a learning curve. There are things that I didn't do correctly or I did in the wrong order. But that's the challenge of not having someone who is representing you that is able to direct you, tell you the steps,
Right.
tell you what not to do. Of course, there's always room for error
Right.
with things like Twitter. We're always prone to mistakes.
Right. There's a lot of people that don't do the right thing on Twitter. And even if you were a professional and had lots of professionals around you helping you do this writing life, you're still going to make missteps. I think the thing is to understand that and to not let the fear keep you from trying things. One of my things and also how we met is that I believe in writing groups. I believe in sort of the power of numbers. And I know we met at the writing group at the library that I work at, Lakeland Public Library. And I think if you as a writer get involved in those types of things and you pay attention to what's happening around you, I think maybe you make fewer missteps.
You have to educate yourself.
Right.
Attending writers' conferences is essential. They have big ones, the ones in San Francisco and New York.
Right.
But they also have smaller ones
ones.
right here in Tampa. I think there's one coming up.
Yeah, it
in
is.
Tampa.
It's a,
Wordier Than Thou.
Oh, I forgot about that one, yes. But there's another one happening, I can't remember it right now, but yes, there's another one coming up like in the next 2 months.
Right, and
So,
they help shape your work. So you can
Right.
bring your work there, speak with an editor. I remember the first time I'd gone to one in San Francisco, I sat down with an editor with my a few pages of my Ashes of a Madman, actually.
Right, right.
I just researched so intensely for the writing of that book.
Right.
What was going on during the period, what was the culture like, because it's about a woman from England who travels to Africa.
Right.
So it was a big transition for her. So what was she seeing? So getting those details felt important to me. The editor looked at it and
Right.
she said, "This is beautiful." And then she took her pen and she just made a big slash across the first page, and she said, "Too much historical detail."
Right.
So we have to keep ourselves humble, make sure that we're able to continue to learn and appreciate that it's a raw material, just like if you imagine your work being a diamond.
Right.
You're not going to set the big lump on somebody's desk and say, "Look at this beautiful diamond." You want it to be cut and
polished and
perfected.
faceted. Yes,
Yeah, and that
yes.
takes professional work.
Right. And of course, my thing is, I always like to talk about, you don't get up in the morning and sort of roll out of bed. Well, some of us do. But most of us, we get up in the morning, we bathe, we wash our face, we put on a little lipstick if we're a girl, or not, if you just want lipstick. And you dress nicely and you go out into the world. And that's also how you have to approach your writing, and be willing to have someone say, that length of skirt doesn't do it for you, or maybe you should try a brighter lipstick. Or in our writing, maybe you have too much historical detail at the front, and so you might want to rework it. And because you mentioned that, I have to say that I've been remiss. I did not tell you all that she writes historical novels, and yeah, she's pretty brave with the things that you tackle. You talk about all kinds of social issues of the time, and yeah, you want to talk a little bit
Sure.
about that?
Ones that resonate among women even today.
Right.
We see there are trials going on all the time about things that happen against women,
Right.
And how we are to talk about that. Is there a victimization of a woman? How does a woman view themselves if they think of themselves as a victim? So I talk a lot about, especially in my first book, Ashes of a Madman, that one deals a lot with the traumatic events of the main character, Rebecca, and what she encounters. Her husband has a number of some mental health issues, which usually goes hand in hand with substance abuse issues.
Right.
And then those slide very easily into violence, domestic violence, or all kinds of difficulties. So with a little bit of background in mental health, it helps me to appreciate that those are challenges that are difficult to result in a happily ever after ending. And lots of people love them, but with all of the challenges that a person experiences, we can't just imagine that, okay, here's the solution and everybody's all better.
Right.
And that resonates through each of the books that I have, including Blind Man's Bluff. The first in the series is
the Black Butterfly.
Black Butterfly, yes.
Yes.
So in Black Butterfly, you're stepping into a period of her life just after a severe trauma, and you're coming to know what happens to her and how she responds to it, and how others respond to her, knowing that there is something traumatic in her background.
Right.
How that might limit her in certain relationships, what she's afraid to talk about. Because a lot of times when a woman, when there is a perpetrator of a crime against a woman,
Very true.
the social group around the woman doesn't want to accept that this could have happened.
Right.
And so it's easier for them to believe this didn't happen. And when they have to confront it, then what does that result in within that social group? So it's a
Right.
real challenge. So even though they are historical novels, we know that these crimes against women have happened throughout humanity, the whole
Right.
history of humanity.
Right, and of course it's still happening today, which is why it's important that you write about this, sort of to give us a continuum. Obviously you're writing to entertain, but if you can write and entertain and then also sort of shine the light on things that happened then but are still happening now, that's a good thing. Oftentimes people will learn from fiction much faster than they can learn from nonfiction. it's easier to sort of project yourself into a character, a main character, or even a lesser character, rather than to read something kind of dry saying, well, if this happens, go to the police. If you can see those characters move through their lives, it makes you think, well, if this character was able to go through all of that, I can do something too.
It helps us to cope with whatever our emotional response would be. So in the first book with Rebecca, her character kind of lets herself be a subject of these difficult challenges. So she's continually choosing to be in a very difficult position with her husband and with her life. Whereas in the second book, in Chatham Bride, even though that is a much lighter, funner, that book is a lot more fun,
Right.
her character is much more aggressive when it comes to dealing with challenges. So she doesn't allow those challenges to define her. She is extremely resilient with them. She's not afraid to fight back. She's not afraid to stand up for herself as an individual. So you see both sides of things. And I think we see that reflected with women every day. You'll see women wonder. I remember back when in the Clinton era, a lot of people wondered, well, why is Hillary staying with the president? Why is she making that choice? And we see that in different, even in our personal relationships. Do they stay or do they choose to leave? And that is something that is deeply personal, and it's never dependent on a single factor. Well, this happened, therefore you must do this.
Right. That's very true. And that also is true for whether or not a person tells when a thing happens. It's like, sometimes it has to do with how many times did it happen, how horrific, who it is that did it. And as we already mentioned, it's like, and what does their larger social circle say or is likely to say? And it's difficult to say, well, they should have, when there's more than just one thing that goes into decision making. So,
and it makes it an adventure for the reader, because sometimes you'll have a character who you appreciate some of those emotional challenges or the challenges that they're contending with at the moment, and the reader might choose to go left, whereas the character in the novel chooses to go right. And that can be frustrating, but that's what makes reading fun, is because you'll see the reasons why, and that's where, as a writer, you have to make sure that even when a character does something that you may disagree with, you can appreciate why they made that decision. You might see, well, this is going to cause more trouble for them, but you also appreciate, okay, I see why they made this choice. They really need to see this through, or they really needed to end it there, whatever that choice happened to be.
Right. And of course, it's their choice to make, and not so much our choice. So we should let people, as they say, get on with what they need to do, and be willing to offer them support along the way.
And as you're reading them, it's such a pleasure to, when you're thinking about the scenes, you know what the character is doing and you know where you want them to go. So when you're writing those bridge scenes to make them connect, that's such a wonderful opportunity to introduce either characters or situations that explain why she's making that decision, or to present an option that she can either choose to accept or refuse. And it allows the character or the reader to have a little bit more insight into those decisions, or add some comedy or whatever the scene needs at the moment.
Of course, we're talking and time is going, and it's almost time for us to finish. But I want to ask you, why historical fiction?
I have always enjoyed reading. Since I was very young, I read the books in the library, and I'd walk down the street. I remember even, I'll have to admit this to you, I would excuse myself from class, and I would have a study hall, and I would walk down the street and go to the public library and read books there. And I just always gravitated to history. And
Okay.
there's so much, it's so rich. And to see why, when you read history, sometimes it can feel very cardboard.
Yes.
But when you're really looking at the individuals in the past as humans, with why did they make this decision?
Right.
Why did they act cowardly in this moment?
Right.
Or what made them brave at this moment?
Right.
How did they handle this? You start to fill that space with life events. How were they raised? Who were they interacting with? How did they become violent? How did they become passive? How did they become supportive and tender? All of those human emotions, they come from something. We're all built by something.
Right.
The people around us, our life, our choices, and
Right.
the same thing builds people in the past. So that's why I love history. It gives it so much more depth.
Right.
So, and the historical fiction pieces that, yes, these are situations that existed, and then you take people who have to interact with these individuals who
Characters,
really
yeah.
lived.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, that explains the whole thing. It's like you're reading this history, and you always want to know more. So when you're creating your own stories, you can put in the more, so that your reader can really appreciate why we made the decisions. Well, why your characters make the decisions that you make. Time is getting very close. I want to ask more questions, but I can't because it'll take too long.
We could talk all day.
Well, it's true. Well, it won't take too long for me, but it'll take too long for the show. So with that, I want to say this before we close. I want to remind everybody that you can find out about her writing, Miss Maria York's writing, at mariayork.com. She has a presence on the web, as any good author does.
Facebook, Twitter, Wattpad, yes.
Yes. Oh, and that's one thing I wish we could talk about is Wattpad. In case you're curious and go, what is Wattpad? Wattpad.com, WATTPAD.com, is a platform where writers can share their writing. It's free. It's free, and that's a good place, a good platform for writers to be able to pick up new readers and try new techniques out.
And get immediate feedback from the readers. I always think of it as sitting in a movie theater and you're able to hear the people behind you whispering, "What? I can't believe he said that."
Right,
or,
right.
"You go, girl." And you'll see you'll see the writing on the side, and you can just click and see what they say. And it really helps the writer to appreciate not only maybe some proofing errors, but also characters that maybe need to be filled out a little bit more, or just the general excitement that the reader feels.
Right.
They can write that and interact with other readers, interact with the author. So it's a fun way to get your writing out there and get it shaped just a little bit before you hit the professional level, or even after, just because it's free. And since I started off reading books in the library, and it makes sense to make it available to everyone who wants to read.
And oftentimes you get a chance to see the newer writers, but then sometimes there are established writers on there too. So yeah, I think that's a cool thing.
Try it out, yeah.
Yeah, you should. And you'll get a chance to read some of Maria York's writing there. So I think that's it. And I thank you so much for joining us today, our watchers. And mostly, I thank you, Maria York, for joining us today.
My pleasure, Brenda. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's edition of Writer's Den.